I think we're just going to get started. It's so wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Good to see many familiar names. Thank you for being with us for over the past 2 years. And today we have Ming Fan joining us, and I will get to introduce Ming in a second. So for those who are new, my name is Zhang, and this, as I mentioned, this is our 95th event since the pandemic started. And I'm the founder of Wild China, a travel company headquartered in Beijing, but we have many offices in China. That's why I traveled back this time. And Ming Fan, or in Chinese, we switch it around, it's Fan Ming, is the executive director at United States Heartland China Association. This is a grassroots bipartisan organization committed to building bridges and promoting opportunities between the Heartland region and China. And we both just went back to China. I think Ming went back and traveled to Xi'an and Chengdu, around other areas, let me see, and also Shanghai. Did you go to Shanghai as well? Shanghai, Xi'an, Beijing, and Chengdu, right? And I just came back literally 3 days ago. I still have a little bit of a jet lag, and visited Shanghai, Beijing, Yunnan, Guangdong, and Zhejiang. So lots of traveling around. So we've come together to really share our experiences. Ming is a US citizen, so she traveled on the US passport. I'm a Chinese citizen on the Chinese passport and the Chinese ID card. So there may be some differences there. And also things are changing constantly. So we may have experienced slight differences here and there. Now, before we begin, I'd like to just briefly introduce Ming. In addition to serving as the executive director at the U.S. Heartland China Association, Ming is also a member of the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations. And prior to joining USHCA, Ming had a successful career as an innovative leader in the corporate world and also led nonprofit organizations with a focus on promoting understanding between the US and China. So I would encourage all of you to follow USHCA either on social media or by subscribing to their newsletter. So we'll jump straight in. I know, Ming, thank you for taking the time. And I know you have prepared a PPT, which will guide us through some of these discussions, and then we'll get to the many questions that have been pre-submitted. Or if you have any, feel free to put them in the PPT. With that, let me hand over to you, Ming.
Thank you, Zhang. It's such an honor to share our experiences together. So we have a very simple slide deck. First is to really talk about the new reality of traveling to China. Before the trip, all the things that's different or the same, arrival in China and quarantine, and post-quarantine being in China and returning to the US from China. And so I will share my experiences, then hand it back to Zhang. And so before the trip, for me, I'm a US citizen. I have to get a visa. We used to don't even think about it. We have a 10-year visa, you just get your ticket and you zip over. But now you have to get a new visa, and it's actually a lot more difficult. I have friends who are business professional. They have business special visa to go to China. But for me, it was actually a humanitarian visa. So my mom actually became very ill. I had to, thank you. And she toughed out, and she's fine now. And by the time you read about pandemic, think about the impact, I never crossed my mind that I would be, on the receiving end. So when I couldn't get hold of my mom and finally found out she actually is in the emergency room, I almost panicked. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to figure out how to go to China now. Well, I don't even know where to start. Even before we didn't have to think about it. But what was really helpful, again, I live in Colorado, so the consulate that support our state is actually in Chicago. So I immediately contacted the consulate, and they were very helpful. And they basically told me that here are the things you had to fill out, a lot more forms, and there are documentation you had to provide to show that indeed you have a family member that's critically ill. So I had to work with my relatives in China to get hospital documentation. And the one thing that really challenged me was a proof birth certificate, some to show that I am the daughter of my mother, which never before said, okay, that was even a question. So it actually took a bit of gathering to get the data information together. But once I submit them, very quickly, I heard back saying, yes, you will get a visa. And you just send your stuff to this, FedEx it to Chicago, and then, wait for your visa. One thing I would say that collecting the documentation is very important. Another thing is there is a website you have to fill in a lot of information that gave you a code, then you can proceed. So that will occur throughout the process is there's a technology element that you have to be comfortable with. And then for me, because I didn't have much option, I need to get to China soon. I couldn't pick and choose a time where a ticket is inexpensive. So I have to admit, I bought the most expensive ticket I ever bought. And then it was a coach ticket. And then when I was normally going to China, as Zhang may be able to relate, we packed gifts, all the things. And this time, no, there's no gift because one, I don't know. We were preparing for the quarantine. You might be in quarantine. So my friend told me, okay, if you medication, bring laundry that you can wash and dry quickly since you'll be in quarantine, or some extra food. But yeah, try to pack light if you can, because you don't know what stairs or where you'll be lugging through or going through the processes. The most challenging part is actually pre-flight, the checklist, because I live in Colorado. So you have to pick one of the airports where there's a direct flight to China. For me, I chose San Francisco, even though United Airlines was not the less expensive one, but they were more dependable because there is a situation where if a COVID case was found, they will cancel a flight. So I have friends whose ticket were canceled multiple times. Yes. So I decided to go where it's less likely to be canceled, which was San Francisco. And then you had to go to a designated clinic to get a COVID test. This is no swab, right? John, I don't know if you had to take a picture of me getting my blood drawn from my vein, because people say, hey, just be safe, take a picture that you are really getting tested. And then the most amazing part is after you do the test, upload it, and I wonder, how do seniors do this? And amazingly, there are actually new business popping up, helping you navigate through this whole process for a couple $100. But to save money, I never get through the whole thing. And then the test in San Francisco was pretty expensive, I would say, was about $500. Yeah. And the key thing is you have to get this green code, but it's the most tech advanced green code I've ever seen. It's a running green code. It's not a dead green code. So Zhang is going to show you.
I'm trying to pull it up because mine is still fresh. Go ahead.
If you say, oh, I got a screenshot of the green code, you will not be able to board a plane. You had to record the green code with this still moving. So it was pretty advanced technology, I would think. And so another thing I realized is, I talked to friends, check the list on the website of the consulate, but still the policy is always changing. So I prepare for the most complex policy and then but still monitor. And finally, I would say you have to be flexible because sometimes you have no control of everything. And so if you can make sure you're in a position where if changes happen, you can be okay, then that is a really good way to go into trip. So let me turn to Zhang to share her experience.
Right, thanks. First of all, this is sort of like generally what the green codes would look like, and it's called a health code. And you start the night before boarding the flight, right? Really stressful in getting this code because you're uploading of your test results multiple times. And I see my friend Zhao Yao is online who was helping me navigating through this. Once you have that in China, you will get comfortable with it. And Jaya just put in the chat box saying these COVID and antibodies tests, although they're expensive, you can actually get reimbursed. I'll try. I never knew that. I'll try that. And I would say most of my experience are very similar to yours, except I lucked out. I am a citizen, so I have a Chinese ID, which of course cut out the visa complication. And if you are going to China for business, it's actually also documentation. It's extremely important. If say, while China as a travel company issues an invitation, it doesn't count. That's considered as a tourist visa, which are not issued. So you have to have a fairly highly established, like larger institutions for company business purposes inviting you, and there's limited slots, so it's not easy to get a visa. And also, what was I going to say? I also flew SFO to Beijing, to Shanghai. I would say that is probably the easiest landing port in China. Shanghai is much more friendly, and United Airlines is fairly dependable. And I bought economy, but if you have any of the points and status from before, I got upgraded both ways. So that's much more comfortable, and it's worth the money because the ticket itself is quite expensive. And last thing I wanted to add is the taking a picture of you having your blood drawn with your passport. That process has improved. They no longer require those pictures, thankfully. But more or less fairly similar. And I completely agree with Min's points. Being flexible is just tell yourself, do not stress, because it's already a high stress situation. So calm down, be flexible, life will improve. Back to you, Min.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing, because when I was getting myself tested in San Francisco, in the same clinic, there were people who were getting retested because their flight had been canceled the week before due to the typhoon. So they were like, okay, our test was invalid. We have to get a new one. But again, nobody can predict typhoon, right? But you just kind of shake it off and move on.
Yeah. And I want to say, get the list of designated testing sites from the embassy, email them. That list changes.
Right. Oh, one more thing I'll say, that some of the clinic, they are so efficient. They actually help you organize a WeChat group by the flight. And then you actually meet some of the people you are going to be on the same flight, and they share tips and whatnot. So one thing I realized that it's a very interesting experience when you get an airplane, everyone's got a mask. Some of them have goggles or the whole PPE.
Hazmat suit.
Right. So there's very little conversation. But before the flight, if you are in that WeChat group, people actually are very open and sharing. So there are still, people are connecting, even though we are trying to stay away from each other. Yeah. All right, so the fun part, right, in China and quarantine. So just like Zhang Mei, we talked to friends who have traveled. Believe it or not, Zhang Mei, we've known a business leader who invested in a new plant in China from United States, and to attend the grand opening. And he actually, managed a 2-week quarantine and was able to present in person at his company's opening in China. And again, working with the consulate, make sure that the right documentation is in place. So just like Zhang Mei, I picked also Shanghai because we heard that they are very efficient and they actually let you order things while in your quarantine versus other places you may not be able to order takeout. So I was especially lucky because it was like huge suite. It was a big bedroom, big bathroom, and it's open to a courtyard. I could see through my window trees, birds. Actually, one night there were like cats wandering around. So I felt I was in a mini retreat. Part of the reason because I'm the kind of type who used to actually spend money to go to meditation retreat in the mountains where I don't have to talk to anyone. So my husband jokingly said, hey, you got a meditation retreat, right? Again, the food was sending every day for someone like me, who grew up in a military base. in China, this is kind of pampered. I got food brought into me. I was working on Zoom and I had my daily routine, did my exercise. And when I was in China, it was the Olympics, right? So people say, hey, have you watched this Olympics? Or did you see the American gymnast posing with the Chinese one? That was big news. So another funny thing was when the Chinese athlete returned to China, they were also going through quarantine. So on the social media, showing them doing their exercise in the quarantine. So I felt like I wasn't alone. I was along with the Chinese team athlete returning. There's a little bit of camaraderie going on. So the 2 weeks in Shanghai, the first week felt kind of slow, but then the second week really quickly went by. And then make sure you get the documentation in paper, in digital, everything. You want to show that you have, passed this test. There was a lot of tests every other day. And then it was really interesting because at the beginning, the staff with all PPT protection would knock on the door. Then I'll get the food. I'll say, thank you. And then I realized they would just nod. And then I tried to have a conversation, say, oh, you guys must be working so hard. They were like, well, this is a new business for us. So they were very interesting. But then on the third, fourth day, I realized I'm the only one saying thank you. People just kind of open the door, get the food, shut the door, then move on. So it became a little bit monotonous after a while. And I'll hand over to Zhang.
I actually ridiculously produced a short video clip on my Instagram, Wild China May, and it's called 10 Reasons I Found Quarantine Enjoyable. I know, everyone thought I was insane. But truly, like if you develop a routine, like Ming was saying, it's really productive, I find. You can zone out, there's no noise, literally no noise. If you can find a way to be comfortable with yourself, to work, I really felt very well taken care of. The food, I think both me and I are probably ethnically Chinese. So I personally found the food very good for at least 10 days. It's better than what I can cook up at home. But for anyone who's not so accustomed to Chinese diet, it becomes very repetitive after about a week, right? The one thing I want to know is, do you have a Chinese bank card? Because the one thing that makes life extraordinarily enjoyable is having Jingdong or Taobao or any of these Chinese online payment delivery shopping capabilities. Things come really fast. If I'm hungry if I want a pack of sunflower seeds, I'll order it tonight, it comes tomorrow morning. It is really fast, but you have to have the Chinese payment capability. Did you have any problem with that?
No, actually, I didn't have a Chinese payment because one of the reasons, because I don't have a Chinese citizen card. I'm a US passport holder. And in the past, I use WeChat, but my WeChat has no wallet. My wallet, because I don't have any card that's attached to it. So the way actually, we forgot to mention, you have to have a phone that works in China that has WeChat on it. And when we were sent to the quarantine room, the staff communicated with us through WeChat. They would say, okay, scan the QR code and then ask any question in that group. Like even when I order stuff from the store, we were only allowed to order stuff from those local store attached near the hotel. And
how do you pay?
So what I did is I have my Chinese friend transfer me a little bit of money in hongbao, red pocket envelope. And then I have a little bit in my change and then I'll buy stuff. So when the quarantine, you have to actually pay for yourself, right? So I didn't have enough money. So I have my Chinese friends pay for me. And then later I pay them back. So that's the big hindrance is if you don't have a payment system, then you have to rely on your friends, which worked for me. So my friends are like, okay, if you, I think it was like a couple $1,000s, right? For the 2 week was maybe 4,000 or 5,000.
I was like $80 a day, $60 a day.
Okay.
Yeah, for 14 days.
Okay, so you were talking about dollars, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think I have my friends cover
$1,000.
for me and then pay it back. One more thing I'll mention is that I was told in Shanghai at the time, when I finished 2-week quarantine, I could roam around freely. And a lot of people did. But I had to go see my mom, who was in Xi'an, which actually brings up the halal food option, because when I went to Xi'an, they had a Muslim option for food.
Oh,
So I didn't get to enjoy that. And then, so that kind of leads to my second, we will share the additional quarantine. But if you're going to Shanghai after 2 weeks and you're good, nobody in your group is tested positive, then you are free to be out about.
yeah. I think the online payment in Chinese WeChat is almost, it's really essential now to enjoy in China. In my entire 6 weeks from landing in China to coming back to the United States, I did not go to bank once. I did not touch a banknote or a coin once, not at all. So I don't know, like, how did you manage when you are out of quarantine? How did you get money? How do you pay for you?
Again, my Chinese friends were a lot smarter than me. They said, oh, there is a 亲属卡, relative card. One of my friends actually had me tie my WeChat account to his card. And then I was spending money from his card, then I'll pay him back, right? But you're right, you know, from buying ticket for the train to food, buses, you need that payment system. So I think, again, for me, I didn't have a digital wallet. I didn't have a card tied to it, but I had a friend who's willing to tie my account to his card. And then I was able to actually spend, borrow from my friend while I was on that trip.
That's quite a friend.
Yeah.
Not everybody will have a friend who will give you a credit card access. The truth is, we haven't really encountered such level of digital payment before. While China takes care of tons of clients prior to COVID, but now it's gone a completely 100% digital. So I guess we'll figure it out when travel restarts. But right now in China, it's really rare to see money. I
think, Zhang, while China, again, if you have a client and then you have a card, right? It's almost running a tab. Right? Then actually, my friend did set me a daily limit. So then I'll be like, okay, I ran over the minute. Can you bump up the limit? Felt like I was a teenager again, right? Asking my parents to up my limit. But you're right. One thing that was really funny was that in Shanghai, I think before I left, I met with an older friend for lunch. So him being senior, I really need to pay for the nice dim sum. And it was actually delicious dim sum. And I didn't have hardly any money left. I didn't want to ask my friend to up the limit. So I took out cash, Chinese, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen Chinese currency in 3 years. Actually, people gathered around me, say, hey, this weird lady's got cash. And but it was really funny because they actually took it because I didn't have enough, and I didn't want my older friend to pay.
Yeah. Last point on this is because in the last a couple of years there was a new mint, a new batch of banknotes that came out. Most Chinese people have not seen these new banknotes. I haven't personally. And so when you're presented one, you're like, what sort of money is that? And so it's a very strange thing. So cashless. A friend, Fei Chin, asked, cannot validate my ID card in WeChat, so I don't think I can pay from the red envelope. I think somehow you'd have to get past that technical obstacle to get cash into it. With Wild China, we can probably set a limit and still figure out a way to transfer money into people's WeChat account. Otherwise, it's just, without WeChat, it's impossible to move around in China, right? Yeah, should we move on?
Yeah, again, I think tying the 亲属卡 friend card is a good option. My friend initiated it and tied my account to his card. And that's how I was able to spend money on that. So again, I had to go through extra quarantine, this time in Xi'an. At the time, again, Shanghai was low risk. So in China, people become very sensitive, high risk, low risk, right? And Xi'an was low risk. However, it was hosting the national sports event. And leader, I think President Xi Jinping later visited. So the local government were very strict about clamping down on any incoming potential travelers, which is actually Xi'an right now is in shutdown, as you know. So I actually just talked to my family. They were telling me they got 10 pounds of vegetable from the government. They're trying to eat through them. But at the time when I got to Xi'an, I again was interesting because we arrived really late. When I got really late there, we went to a hotel. Looks like it was like closed. So I was like, okay, is this hotel open? They said, yeah, we intentionally make it look like closed, so people don't think this is a hotel, walk in. And so it was the middle of the night, and I got out of the bus, and then police showed up, surrounded me. And so they want to make sure nobody ran into me while I was going into the hotel because I'm a risk factor. But it was just funny because in the middle of the night, right, I was like, you know, they take it very seriously. But one thing that really changed my perspective was I remember one of the being shuttled around, one person said, "Thank you for what you do to keep us safe." Then I was like, "Oh, you're welcome." But again, in Xi'an, it was a little bit difficult because I didn't have that beautiful yard I was looking at. This is my view. And then, and also I was very close to home. My mom, you know, the situation I was in, I was getting really stressed out. So I actually, this is a picture my daughter drew. I said, "Hey, daughter, this is a view out my window." She drew all the clouds and she said, "Hey, mom, the sun will be around." So it was really helpful to stay connected with family, even though you're in a room. It's really funny in the Zoom world that we have a different universe we're connected to, even though physically you are kind of limited. So another thing in Xi'an, the food was phenomenal. I had the shaozi mian. They had, you can see huicai. They really they brought so much food. I talked to them about, "Hey, can you give me less food?" Basically, they said, "No, everyone get the same. So if you can't finish it, just leave us at the door." And then they had the Muslim option, right? If you're a Muslim, and then you can tell them, and there'll be different food offered to you. So again, I had another week in the quarantine hotel in Xi'an. Then I was able to go home, stay home for a week. Again, the neighborhood came and put the tape on our door, but our maid was able to come every day, kind of putting food and shopping stuff for me. Again, every neighborhood apparently is different. But for me at that time, it was luckily my mom was discharged from the hospital. So I had a really good mother-daughter bonding time, just taking care of her. You know, she actually was happy. I wasn't running around. I was around 24/7 for a change. So that was my additional quarantine.
Yeah, so in China, they have these, you get used to these terms. They would say 14+7 or 14+14. So you basically had what 14+14, right? Except it's +7.
Yeah, 7/7 they call
7/7, right? And when they say that plus is the level of strictness changes, right? So I got very lucky compared to you because I did 2 weeks. The 14 is centralized, monitored every day, temperature taken every day, not one step out, in a centralized facility that we both went through. And after that, in Shanghai, I was able to move into the +7, for which I could book my own hotel. And I booked to the Shanghai Portman Ritz-Carlton, looking forward to the gym, swim and all that. You check in, they say no. When you are in the +7, you cannot use the public facility in the hotel, but they were nice enough to tell me all the bars and restaurants outside are open. So I was practically moving around as free as anybody in the third week. So that was pretty nice, except I still couldn't use the gym or the pool at the hotel. Yeah, it sounds like your Xi'an is much more strict, and I feel so sorry for those people who are in Xi'an right now, which is under much more strict lockdown. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
One thing I have to mention when I talk to my friends in Xi'an, they all seem to be okay.
Oh,
I
good.
mentioned my mom saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna eat through the cabbage, the carrots, and the eggplant, the cucumber the government gave us." And then other friends are with kids. They seem to be spending quality family time. But again, there are also people under stress and borrowing money because their business shut down. So you get a sense of some people just coasting through it, other people hanging there.
Mm. It's one of the very impressive thing during these 2 weeks of quarantine is how rigorous and systematic everything is run. Like the system runs like a clock. Like every point of time, there's someone checking up on you. It's really very tightly run. And in fact, there was a funny line. Someone said, China is treating COVID as if it were as bad as in the US. And US was treating COVID as lightly as if it were China. Sort of in a funny way to put it. But the workers there are very dedicated and they work impressively well. Okay, so.
I would say the same. I also feel a lot of people are stressed out, especially on the front lines, just like the front line workers here. I remember waiting to be assigned to the hotel in Xi'an, and you see all the people with PPE, don't really see them. And there was one guy, I think he got too hot. He finally took his goggles off, and I saw his jet black hair, and then see what the person really looked like. And he's like wiping his sweat, right? Talking about where is that bus that here to pick up people. They work really long shifts. They do take it very, very seriously. I also had an interesting discussion with a student who said that, isn't that interesting? Because at the time, again, coming from Colorado, students in China were saying, hey, you have so many shootings in the United States. What's going on? So we had interesting discussion how in China, people feel safe because the government takes care of the guns and COVID. And then they, in exchange for other things. And by the United States, we have to defend for ourselves on the gun problem or COVID. And so that was very interesting. But I do think that this travel felt like we were in two very different systems for sure. Right? Yeah. But people find the peace and life goes on, as I capture in some of the picture I have here. So what I'm sharing first is that once you get out of quarantine, it's actually really pretty cool, right? You see, wow, people are doing Tai Chi and the nun in the Muslim alley, people are selling them, buying them. And there are a couple sitting by the lake, enjoying the weekends. All if you have all the right technology codes, right? So for me to get so because I have a US passport, I couldn't get in Shanghai, Suishenban, the second code, I couldn't by all the different inquiries, I couldn't get one, but I was able to get this big data one, the first one. And that one, so I get as many as I could manage. So I got this first one to be green. The third one turned green for me. And then I was able to use those both codes and release the paperwork and board the plane from Shanghai to Xi'an. And later when I went to Chengdu, I couldn't get my code to work for Chengdu either, but I showed them the big green arrow and the one from Xi'an, so the people will wave me through. And then when I went to Beijing, they had to take a Beijing one. They wouldn't take anything else. I was stuck at a train station. I couldn't get it work at all. Then finally someone said, oh, you should try the health kit. It's especially for foreigners. And then if you use the Beijing Jiankangbao Chinese version, you can't get through. So I use a health kit, and then I got the right green code. I was able to board the bullet train, the train to Beijing. And again, once you get through that, it's amazingly how life seemed normal in many, many corners. So that's just one thing about make sure that you have a phone that's WeChat enabled, you can work with the apps. Another thing is because I'm a US passport holder, and sometimes when I check in hotels or go other places, I don't have a 身份证 citizen card, so I had to go to special menu processing. And actually it was helpful. Sometimes the lines are very short because they're for seniors and pregnant women or foreigners who are stuck. So actually I always go to the shorter line, and with all the codes I have available, I was able to get through from city to city.
Yeah. I can relate. Actually, I got it easy just because with the ID, it seemed initially very confusing, all the codes, right? This is just an example of the amount of codes. But one way to understand it is taking a step back is there are 2 codes to get to, there are only actually 3 codes, really. One is the customs code when you go in and out of the country. It's like a custom report code that you only use for entering and getting out, right? And then when you are in the country, there are only 2 other codes that you use. One is this big green arrow, the first one. It's called the Itinerary Code. It shows where you came from. And so if you've been through a high-risk area, it shows on your phone. And so that doesn't say if you have a green health currently. It doesn't tell about your personal health situation. And then this second code is the health code. Now the health code, the reason there are many examples here that Ming had a problem with was each city has their own version of it. And you're always required to show for the city you're in. And if you're taking a flight or train, you're also required to show for the destination you are going. And sometimes it's a bit challenging to navigate that health code. But, like Ming was saying, she was able to navigate with various ways. There are 2 questions here. One is the masks. I just used a cloth mask on the flight. What about you?
I actually bought a 95. So I'm being very careful, but you're right. When I was in China, I was chuckling behind that mask because, in the city is 5 million with no cases. Why am I wearing a 95? But people are very, very good about wearing masks. Even the little kids, I remember seeing little kids reminding their mom, mommy, you forgot to put your mask up, right? The kids like second nature, mask up. So definitely, yeah, it's not a problem there.
Yeah, it's all the public trains, flights, movie theaters, plays, everyone's masked. Not a single person isn't masked because someone will approach you and boot you out if you're not masked, right? So universal 100% masking. But in restaurants, in parties, or even in office, once you go through the front door, when you're in the office, like everyone's mask off.
Yeah, like you go to the restaurant in Shanghai, it just feels like the good old days, right?
Yep.
People having lunch hour, office break. Yeah, it was, as I share a note right here, even though the picture from outdoors, it's just people enjoying life.
Yeah, yeah. Is the Foreigner's Health Kit on WeChat? No, that's a separate app or a mini program.
It's a mini program. And again, that's a one apparently Beijing created just for foreigners that work very well. And that one actually worked for many other cities if you couldn't get the local ones to work.
So when we say mini program, that is a small program inside WeChat, generally speaking. Yeah. Yeah. Do we have more, or should we cut to some of the questions we have?
Well, one thing I'll just really be quick about. And again, once you get a quarantine, my favorite part is zipping around in the trains, right? The trains are, again, amazing how efficient. There's a dining car, people are eating, and then walking down the Muslim alley, seeing the takeout, the Waimai boys taking a break and meeting with family, friends, and it just, again, priceless. Again, I think people say, is it worth it? I think totally it's worth it. Especially, I remember when I was going to college, it would take me 13 hours by train from Xi'an to Beijing to go to school. But right now, you fly across the ocean. So I think about the months it used to take the train, the boat from China to the United States. Still, it's a lot faster and in a lot of comfort.
Yeah, no, I second that. It sounds daunting before you do it, but once you've done it, it's really enjoyable, and so I find it absolutely worth it. And in fact, I would not hesitate to go back in like half a year. Don't tell my husband. So okay, go ahead.
In fact, you may notice the crowd is actually not that busy. I have friends in China who I could take advantage of special promotion. They are actually traveling all around China.
Yeah.
Because the hotel is cheaper, crowd is smaller, and nature is less populated. Even when I go to restaurants, and it was actually, you almost feel like the VIP experience, just because not that many people were there.
So just answering one question in the chat box. Yes, finish all your 14+7 in Shanghai. Then you're free to go everywhere. You're like considered, you've qualified for the country. Even other destinations, 14+7+7. When you get there, you don't need to do another 7. So you are done. Do it there. Yeah. Returning to US.
And it's a piece of cake, right? I think, again, there are the tests required. At the time I was returning, it was 48 hours before. I don't know if Zhang Mei, they changed it. So I went to, this is another thing, that I booked the hotel close to a hospital that can provide the right kind of certificate. Because for coming back to US, at least I was told the test result has to be in English. So if you go to a little clinic, they might not have the capacity. So I went to Fudan Fushu Yiyuan, one of the big hospitals, and it took a little bit running around the hospital. Chinese hospital can be very crowded. So I actually made sure I get to Shanghai with extra time, so I can get my test in a good hospital and make sure they gave me the English version. And then, I was ready to, come back.
Okay, on that one, it's actually simpler now in my experience. I just went to the same hospital behind the Portman. It's like 5 minutes walk from the Ritz-Carlton. It's one of the local regional hospitals. There are many in Shanghai, and they all do testing 24 hours a day. There's a specific outdoor place you go. You can pick up your test result from an ATM. They give you a card, you check out whenever you are free, like 3 o'clock in the morning, you can go and run your card through the machine, like picking up cash, like an ATM, literally. And then it prints out your report in English.
I think you definitely were lucky, because when I went to the hospital, I didn't have a Chinese ID card.
Oh,
so I had to, because if you have ID card, you put it on there, right? You finish the paperwork. And I didn't have ID card. So as a foreign passport holder, you have to go to the hospital registration to get yourself a hospital ID and put money in it. Then you can go through everything and use that to pull your report out. So that's another thing, is if you're a foreign passport holder without Chinese ID, some of the ATM machine might not work with you. You have to get a temporary. I still have my Fudan Hospital ID card. So just a little more, again, give yourself buffer time and give yourself time for things that may not work out the first time.
You know what conclusion I'm getting out of this conversation is, if you don't have a Chinese passport ID card, you have to travel with Wild China. Just a joke. Okay, back to you, Min.
Yeah, coming back was easy. And I still remember my friend said, okay, you be careful. You're going to a pandemic disaster zone. So protect yourself. And then they are really worried. Still today, they would say, oh, wow, you have 3,000 cases in Colorado. Be safe. So again, the reality is, the attitude reality is very different. But coming back was, piece of cake, right? There's no quarantine, and we just coming back from one of the safest COVID country, I would say, and then just protect yourself.
Yeah, yeah. The last question in the chat box there, those regulations, whether to get 7 days or not, things change so fast. Check with the consulate that you are working with. It's updated often, very often, so we wouldn't know the set answer. Okay. Thank you. I hope that's helpful for everyone. We do have a list of questions pre-submitted. Let's just run through some of them. We hope to get through. One is from Christopher Summers. Do you see it getting easier to travel in the summer of 2022 with an American vaccine plus booster? You want to take that, or?
I think I'm not optimistic for the summer. Just because we, with what's happening with Omicron, right?
Yeah.
You see Xi'an being shut down. This is still very taken super seriously. So I think it's a huge liability for any governmental officials to welcome foreign travelers. So I'm not too optimistic for the summer.
I second that. Yeah, and Helen Ko asked, when is China opening the border? Your take?
I think it's not totally shut down. As I mentioned, I have been back for family reason. Chinese passport holders can choose to go back, just navigate a new process. I've known American business friends who have made it back. So if you want to go, there is a way. It's just need to invest in extra time and effort to navigate through the process. But again, in the kind of easy going, get your visa, buy your ticket, head over. I would say right now, travel used to be a leisure. You don't even think about it. But right now, travel is, if you're passionate about it, if it's really meaningful, you will still go through it. But it's not. So again, for those people, travel has a special meaning. I think there are still ways to get to China, even with the pandemic going on.
Yeah. David Wong asked, what about returning to China from Canada? Do you know, is there a major difference? I don't know personally. Yeah, okay. All right. Terry Clancy says, my wife and I were in China during SARS traveling for tea, Yixing to Yunnan by car instead of plane. Yeah, no, this time it's very different. SARS only lasted half a year or less. This is going to, I would say 2022, probably it'll go on for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Angela Chen says, thank you. And this is Heloise Merrill asked, please also share your experience interning to the US, which we just did. Iris Yao, is it worth it? We both say yes, right. And Josephine asked, if traveler gets COVID while traveling, what to do? It's a good question.
Couple of things. One, when I was kind of answering our earlier question, when I was in Xi'an, one of my fellow quarantiner actually traveled from Germany to Xi'an, and he actually had to go through 2-week quarantine in Germany before he could board a flight from Germany to China. So that's one thing that, as you said, every country a little bit different. So definitely check with the Canadian situation. What's the question again? Sorry, I was.
What if you actually get COVID while on the ground?
So I actually was fortunate to go to Tsinghua University and met with some of the Schwarzman scholar students who actually just arrived there. And one student told me that one of the fellow passenger he sat next to was tested positive upon arrival. So they all had to go through another extra, more serious quarantine. So the person was hospitalized and taken care of and discharged after, again, the whole airplane got impacted. But that person was definitely, they do take it seriously, take you to the hospital, make sure you are treated and everything.
Yeah. And just I had to transfer my quarantine hotel once because I was occupying a space that they couldn't afford to give me. So anyway, they wanted to transfer me, and they sent an ambulance just for myself, just for one person, entire ambulance with sirens. I don't think he turned the sirens on, but we were definitely running the red lights. So yes, they take it very, very seriously, and you would be going through all the treatment as in China. Yeah, I would say. Okay, Richard Xie says, how much will the current Sino-American relations impact US travel to China after the pandemic?
Well, I'll turn to you.
You know, I'm curious to hear from everybody in this room, really. Obviously, for me personally, this trip back reminded me of how much I enjoy the country. I enjoy meeting the people, the food, the scenery. I even had the good fortune of hiking with a National Geographic walker. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, Paul Solopek. And we walked through the mountains near Lijiang, and the villages are so beautiful. And so to me, I hope everybody will be as eager to return to explore China as I am. But I'd love to hear from, I think if you're in this room, you probably are more inclined to embrace traveling to China. So I don't know. I hope it's positive rather than anything.
Yeah. I think it would be very positive. Recently, we did the event for Kunming and Denver sister city. One of our partner, she's actually older than us, and she just returned from 1 month in Turkey, right? She's older, and she said, I can't wait to go back to China, to go back to Kunming. And then when I was in visiting a student in Tsinghua, they were telling me about many students they know they would love to go back to China for their China studies. There's if you have been there, I think you have been truly touched by the people, the place. And then like me, we have family. Again, there's nothing will stop us to go see the family. But even the business people, as I mentioned, this business leader, investor, stayed for 2 weeks quarantine so he can be at the grand opening of his business. Business is still booming. So I do think that actually recently we're at an event where Ambassador Qinggang's team talk about how they are looking for new processes where they can make it easier, for business travelers. The concept of a bubble or something, quarantine bubble. I don't know what that means. Maybe it's a executive suite. But I think that there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, I hope so. Okay, 2 questions from the Q&A box from Anthony. Oh, hi, Anthony. And what can you do about having access to money if you are a US citizen and don't have a friend or Chinese bank account? I think we touched some of these. 支付宝, the one that's offered by Alibaba actually takes credit card, I believe, international credit card as well. And WeChat might also, but you can give that a try. And I'm sure when inbound travel to China opens, we will figure out a way to enable, I don't know, like what Ming was going through, setting up a relative or a business account for our travelers. I'm sure that's going to be in the makings. And another question is, usually Americans have a 2 to 14 days yearly vacation. Why would they go to China if they have to spend 14 days in quarantine? Yeah, if they have to spend 14 days in quarantine, probably not. And
yeah,
right.
I would say, honestly, being able to go to China, have the flexibility if a hiccup happens, is quite a luxury. And that's why I felt like it's almost like a VIP access, because I could afford for something to go wrong and be stuck there and not worry about, because I was working virtually. I could be on my computer with a VPN. I was actually having regular meetings with my team, hosting events on Zoom. So I think we were fortunate in that way. Another thing I'll mention that I did hear from friends in the US embassy, that they did figure out how to tie their US bank card. I just didn't figure it out. So apparently there is a way. Again, working with Wild China or partners like that who cover your back, that's always a safe option.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank everyone who's put in the chat box. Thank you for joining us. And there's so much interest. And Angela, thank you. And Kitty says she's been to China 6 times, favorite place to go back to. Sarah says several friends there in China be inviting her and can't wait to go. Kitty also being invited to return. Fantastic. Okay, here's one question. US debit cards work there? Yes, so if you can use a credit card or debit card, but those are only in large establishment like hotels or buying more expensive items. You will need a WeChat account for almost everything else. I went to pray in a Tibetan monastery and lit some candles, and afterwards I felt like I would like to donate a little bit of money to the monastery, and I had no cash. And so sure enough, you look on the donation box, there's a QR code. So I was able to do that. So that's probably a must-have.
I do think there are places that will still take cash. It's just, when I was in a Muslim alley in Xi'an, there are places that will still take cash. So you can look around, and there's people who still recognize cash. It's just kind of few and far between.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 more questions here. Does Zoom work in China? That's a quick one. Yes. Did you have any VPN issues?
I had multiple VPNs. I tried all of them. And sometimes I think ExpressVPN worked for me. NordVPN didn't work. And nothing about Zoom is that in the US, you get a Zoom link, you can get in, but in China, you need to get a Zoom meeting ID and a password. That's actually easier. Sometimes the link does not directly work. But yeah, Zoom worked very well. I FaceTime with my family, Zoom with my coworkers. It didn't have much a problem at all.
Yeah, I just put another one there. It's called Shadow Rocket. That also worked fine. Now, have been to China. Ed says been to China 26 times. That's, I think, the record number. How can one load money on WeChat without local address and bank? So we'll figure that out. I don't have a set answer right now. Jenny Liang has a question for you, Min. May I ask how to join the WeChat group that you were talking about?
So one of the clinic in San Francisco, when you register to get your test, they'll ask you what flight, and then they will put you in the WeChat group of that flight. So it's, again, one of the designated clinic in San Francisco that was listed in the consulate's website. Again, the service level varies, and others, like the one I went to is in Chinatown, they didn't have a WeChat group, right? But I have friends who went to a different clinic where they were in the WeChat group. Another thing I'll mention is that in the flight that I took was very interesting. It turned out later I found out we had a U.S. embassy representative, because later we realized when we met in Beijing, we're not same flight, but I think he was taken to a better hotel, and then the rest of us. And another thing was just there are very few foreigners, foreign passport holder. Most of them are Chinese passport holders. Yeah. And then I try to help the other folks who couldn't navigate, because it is kind of difficult if you don't know the language and you don't have WeChat.
Yeah, I would say that this entire process seemed a lot more intimidating before boarding the flight. It's just psychologically, there's a lot of fear of obstacles coming your way. And so I have to admit, upon landing and walking out and being probed deeply in those COVID tests, I mean deeply, and walking through the uncertainty of not knowing which hotel you will be assigned, you can't really pick and choose. That process was challenging. I almost doubted if I would be able to sustain the trip. But as soon as you settle into the hotel room, and people, no matter how routine their work is, they're nice to you. And even at times when I had problem filling out the forms, the individual would say like, 来来来，我帮你. And they just, I'll help you. They just took my phone and helped me fill out the forms. There's this, the beauty, the kindness of people still sort of somehow shine through all the paperwork and stuff and make it worthwhile.
Yes, I would say so. I think, again, many times like, oh, somebody help me, I'm kind of stuck. And then people will come over, right? Sometimes more than you want to try to help you out. Another thing I'll mention is this actually, if you are OCD, like plan everything, control everything, this is not right attitude. If you just like, okay, go with the flow. And then you have a really enjoyable, again, I think as Zhang said, when we go again, it will not be stressful because you've done it once. So you know, so again, go with someone who's been there and who can kind of help you throughout the whole process.
Yeah. And I think we're sadly out of time, and Meredith is still in quarantine, enjoying the remaining days. And Tom, thank you for joining us, and everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And now, Min, do you have any last parting words you want to share in addition to what we just said?
Yeah, I would say that the bond between the people is deep. The lack of travel is actually has its impact. So I highly encourage people virtually, Zoom, whatever, to stay connected with our friends and contacts in China, because I think it's really, really important. When we had the Denver Kunming event, and our friends in Denver are older, they were really, really appreciative. They were talking about it was so wonderful to see the faces of old friends they had visited, and then bring back the memory. So I think that the younger generation owe it to the other folks to create opportunities that people can still visit through Zoom or other digital channels. Yeah,
completely. So we do hope you'll come back and travel with us. We will be sharing links to the various resources that we discussed in the post-event email. So make sure you sign up on info@wildchina.com. And also follow Min's organization. And if you have any questions, reach out. And Min's organization, once again, is U.S. Heartland China Association, USHCA. Thank you all for taking the time. Min in particular, thank you for taking the time. We will see you again and hope everyone will get back to China.
Great, thank you.
Happy Chinese New Year. Soon. Yes.
And I look forward to trying to China with you someday.
Yes, I hope so. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Bye.